Welcome back to the Gut Check Project, episode number 3. We are still here and loving it. What do you think?
Well, are we going to keep doing this till we're like Joe Rogan, episode number 2068? They still let us back on.
2068 means we only have 2065 to go.
There we go. We're getting closer.
We are getting closer. So thank you again for joining us. The feedback is, it's awesome. It's impressive. I had no idea that this many people in such a short amount of time would want to hear what we had to say about bridging the gap between health in natural and medical science.
Absolutely. I love it. We've been, in fact, one of the things we'll get into here shortly is I've been messaged by a bunch of people. I've had a lot of friends from, all over the United States contact us and say, hey, that was interesting. You guys were covering some cool stuff, especially last week. We had Sean Bryans on. If you did not check it out, please deep dive into CBD and a little bit into the cannabis industry, but really cool.
Such a deep dive that the material was so informative that YouTube, of course, allowed us to keep spreading the message, but Facebook pulled our recording down for a little while, and we had to replace it with YouTube. So I guess if you want to know the truth, then sometimes Facebook's gonna slow down a little bit.
Well, and we covered those topics. Like they obviously did that because of the particular topic that we were talking about.
Sure.
We were all about the science of it. We're showing everything. That's what we're going to do. We're going to continue to do this. And today, who do we have on our show?
Today, we're going to be joined by Chef Patrick Mosher. Now, if you listen to the Spoonie Network already, Chef Patrick Mosher is already somebody who you're quite familiar with. However, this guy's got experience from all different aspects of cooking for gigantic hotels, being a part owner of some large chains and putting together the food items. Essentially, he knows how to build food and how to make something out of it.
His message is you are what you eat. My message is all health begins and ends in the gut. This is why teaming up with chefs and getting out there is going to be super cool. And thrilled to have him. He's actually the producer of our show. So this is going to be, if any reason to tune in, it's going to be that we're going to move him over here and he's going to be a guest. So we had to he had to on the fly teach Eric's wife, Marie, to run the production desk over there. So if anything, let's just stay tuned for that because,
If the camera isn't where it's supposed to be, don't be mad at her. She's doing what she can do. She just learned how to do it 2 seconds ago.
Hey, you can't blame her for me setting the camera up incorrectly. Wait, can't blame her. You got to blame me. That's right.
Either way, it doesn't matter. It'll be fun though, regardless. Speaking of, let's get caught up on our recent weekends. Anything big happened with you and your fam this last week?
It's pretty chill. Something kind of cool. I just mentioned a little bit about how people have been messaging us. Now, remember, we are the Gut Check Project. Our phrase is check your ego at the door. Everything's on the table. And somebody had messaged me on Instagram and asked, why do we say Gut Check Project? Why do I check your ego at the door? Coincidentally, last week was actually my birthday on our show. And I read a book written by Ryan Holiday called The Daily Stoic. All this is, it's kind of a fun little way to start your day.
Right.
There's every single day he takes a lesson from a Stoic philosopher and he kind of dumbs it down and gets it through it.
Okay. So
March 14th was one that I had. I thought it was way too coincidental that somebody messaged me for this, and this was the actual thing. So bear with me while I explain this, but it makes total sense to me. And this is the kind of stuff I like to start my day with. So the quote is from Diogenes Laertius. Zeno would also say that nothing is more hostile to a firm grasp on knowledge than self-deception. So what I like about it, Ryan Holiday then breaks it down, basically says self-deception, delusions of grandeur, these aren't just annoying personality traits. Ego is more than just off-putting and obnoxious. Instead, it is the sworn enemy of our ability to learn and grow. As Epictetus said it, it is impossible for a person to begin to learn what he thinks he already knows. Today, we will be unable to improve, unable to learn, unable to earn the respect of others if we think we're already perfect and a genius admitting it. So that was the philosophy that you and I had when we were setting up this show. It's Gut Check Project. Check your ego at the door, sit down, and let's learn from each other. Let's teach each other. And that's why we have a chef on today.
Yeah.
Because we're going to learn a little bit about food.
Right. We definitely will learn a little bit about food.
How about you?
Oh, well, it's a good question. So speaking of my wife, who is going to be working the cameras today for our show, thank you, Marie. This last weekend, we spent our time with my boys putting down a new floor on the chicken coop. So my wife has had experience in the past where we've had our own chickens and we harvest our own eggs. It's the best tasting eggs you can possibly imagine. But if you like spending around $72, $73 an egg, get yourself some chickens, build chicken coop, because it's awesome. They taste terrific. Love you, hon. They're great.
That reminds me, because I do believe that you guys tried some beekeeping at one time.
Yeah.
You and I put together, we have taken care of some patients, which I'm sure they'd be okay with me saying it, that they were beekeepers. So there was Dr. Robert Bender was a gynecologist in town. Unfortunately, he died of cancer, but it was the funniest thing. I'm having lunch with him, and he's talking about how him and his wife decided to get into making honey. He goes, oh, it's fantastic. He goes, I'm a gynecologist. I know how to deal with women. I just have to, treat one queen really good, and I get all this honey. And we're selling this honey. It's local, natural honey. It's $7.60 a bottle. Only cost me $28 per bottle. Exactly what you're saying. And I love that guy, and I love that quote. And unfortunately, he's passed on. But I like it when people take risks like that and kind of own it.
Yeah.
Completely own it. Talk about checking your ego at the door. I'm going to tell you that we're having fun doing it, and we're not making any money.
The farm fresh eggs taste great. We just got to get to a point where we don't have our dogs take the chickens out. That's all there is to it. Hey, you mentioned a book, and something's really cool. It's last week. Do you remember getting this book from Isabella Wentz?
I did. Yes. You and I both received this fantastic book. Isabella Wentz is an amazing PhD. Why don't you go ahead and explain it?
So Ken and I fortunately met Isabella and her husband. It's a year and a half ago when we were working in San Diego, and she was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And she then, after she was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, she went on to change her diet, eliminate some of her trigger foods like gluten and dairy containing foods, and then began to find that she could eliminate that inflammation and put herself on a road to recovery. It's not any different than what you read out of the Stoics book. The reason that we started Gut Check Project, what Chef Patrick's going to join us and talk about, how you can control how you feel with great food. It's no different. So thank you very much, Isabella.
And your husband, I forgot his name, but we'll find that out. And, thank you so much for sending us the book. Definitely going to read this, going to recommend it to my patients. You've done an amazing job of moving.
Yeah, Hashimoto's food pharmacology.
Food pharmacology.
It comes with a full meal plan at the very back with all the way down to exactly what to buy. And it's like any other recipe book, but it's high quality. It tells you why you're doing what you're doing, not just eat this and figure
Here's
it out.
what we'll do. We'll all read it. Then we'll come back and do like a sort of synopsis of it. But once again, Isabel, thank you so much for doing that. Super smart woman. I love talking to her when we were in San Diego at the Mindshare meeting. That was awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see, some quick catch up. For listening here on Spoonie, don't forget, if you want to drop by and pick up some lovemytummy.com/Spoonie for your own Autron teal, you get a discount for using Spoonie as the discount code, as well as check out KBMD Health and get your brand new KBMD CBD at our new store.
So if any of you have ever read Isabella Wentz's books, or if you've enjoyed the show at all, we are all trying to support each other. This is a rising tide will lift all ships. One way to do that is to actually go to these websites, purchase a product, and use those codes so that everyone is trying to help each other out. We want to make sure that Chef Patrick has a successful show and his network grows and the Spoonie Radio digital platform becomes massive. And one way to do it is definitely going on and supporting our sponsors.
Without question. Without question. Well, we'll get moving here. We're in our first half hour, and kind of the format is that we touch on health matters as they come through KBMD Health for us to talk about here on the Gut Check Project. So, Ken, why don't you tell us a little bit about what is on your mind health-wise today?
So one of the things, I mean, I'm a complete nerd, so we want to geek out at some point in this show. And I was thinking of the articles. I basically spent my nose in journals all day long, and so I just try and figure stuff out. But then I came across this really cool article about the science of food, and it just falls perfectly into this Hashimoto's food pharmacology, and we're going to have Chef Patrick on here. So, food is fascinating. Why do we like that? I mean, it does so many things. You've got texture, you've got smell, you have taste, the consistency of it. There's a whole science called food pairing Scientology or science.
Science, yeah.
Science.
Technology.
Technology, yeah.
Sure.
So it's food pairing technology.
Okay.
Where you look at this and you can actually manipulate what's going on. Like, for instance, one of the examples, one of the more simple examples would be like when you eat a really fatty meal, like a ribeye.
Right.
Well, the lubrication that happens on your tongue, if you do too much of it, you can balance that out with an astringent thing that actually binds the proteins and gets rid of that slimy feeling.
Okay.
So it's the balance. You don't want too much of anything. Guess what is very astringent? Red wine. That's how come red wine pairs so well with a good fatty
Steak.
Ribeye.
Yeah.
Because it actually just gets that to go away. And so I started going down this rabbit hole, found these articles, and I'm sure that this is second nature to the chefs out there. And, they're like, oh, of course that is. But this is where it gets really fun. As it turns out, only 20% of your taste is actually happening on your tongue.
Okay.
80% is the aroma. And it's the aroma that comes down to everything. Now, so we perceive the aromas because they interact with our olfactory nerves. So as it turns out, these different aromas do different things, and you can augment them. We talked about the entourage effect last week. You can actually have an entourage effect when it comes to food by pairing certain foods that have chemically similar aroma molecules.
Okay. So, and before you get too far, while you're taking a sip, would this be similar? You said that you would use an astringent to basically cleanse your mouth. It's really probably no different than using, I'm guessing, ginger whenever you're about to eat sushi.
So the ginger works like that. Exactly. So as it turns out, like for instance, did you know that like white chocolate and caviar go very well together?
Did not.
It's wild because when you put it through, when you take these foods, and what these scientists are doing is they're taking the foods and they're putting it into a gas chromatograph.
Okay.
And what that is something that actually shows the molecular weight. And you can go, oh, here's a spike, here's a spike. These two foods share similar spikes. As it turns out, white chocolate and caviar share similar spikes, and that molecule is trimethylaminuria. It smells like fish.
Sure it does.
In fact, there's a disease, on a side note, called it's trimethylamine is the molecule. Trimethylaminuria is the one that I'm familiar with, because I've actually had patients come to me and they're like, it's weird. When I eat certain foods, people can't be around me. They're like, you have a weird odor. That's called trimethylaminuria, and it's that molecule, which is trimethylamine. Certain people have a genetic predisposition where they can't break it down. And I've looked at them and gone, did anybody ever say you smelled like fish? And they're like, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, got it. And all we do is change their diet, and that problem's gone. Yeah, so like you start looking at some of this stuff, and the science behind it is so cool. When you're looking at the interaction, so what can happen is that you can have similar molecules that ping your olfactory nerve that go to your brain and go, oh, that's this. And then if another food pairing pings that same one a little bit, a little more, a little less, so on, then it heightens the first one. So you can build your recipes and food off of the molecular structure. And, beyond the whole tongue thing, the sweet, salt, bitter, sour, umami, the new one, the earthy flavor, this is the way to really take your food to the next level. And much of what chefs have probably learned, Michelin star rated chefs, is they're already doing it without realizing that it could be based on the science of this.
Sure.
So for instance, like a large portion of a strawberry actually has cheesy molecules.
Really?
So you can sit there and pair strawberries with a certain cheese and they will augment each other. They will build each other up. Yeah. So really fun. I never would have thought about this. Checking my ego at the door. I start going down food science because we've got a chef on the show today. And then this opened up a whole thing where I found a UK website.
Now, just real quick, it wouldn't just be any kind of cheese. Surely it has to be. You wouldn't make strawberry nachos. I'm just saying, like a can of queso on top of a pile of strawberries.
No, it has to be certain cheeses with similar molecules
Okay.
that have this. Yeah. And so you can go to foodpairing.com, and my kids were having some fun with this today, where you can create a recipe. So, all right. So I'm going to throw it to Chef Patrick. Give me a protein, anything you want. Give me some food product, and we're going to build a recipe off it right now, live.
Let's go with duck.
Duck. So this
Duck
website,
breast specifically.
Duck breast
we will
specifically.
start with this.
Not a mallard.
Yes. Okay. Would you like it to be wild?
Yes.
Okay. Wild. Now, what we're going to do is somebody has put a duck breast into a gas chromatograph, and they have figured out how to actually pair this. So now, foods that are similar or foods that have a molecular component that is similar include all kinds of different stuff. But basically, here we go. I think that you should pair this with, as it turns out, Remy Martin cognac.
That's the first thing that came to my mind.
First one? Yeah.
Is there any sort of citrus in there?
I don't know. We'll find out right here. Why don't we put a citrus? Let me see if there's one.
Hey, before he answers, Patrick, what kind of citrus would you already kind of intuitively think of?
Well, because you think of something that's sweet yet astringent, like duck à l'orange, right? So you have this rich duck, and it's not just a fat acid thing.
Okay.
It's a combination of all the flavors. So I'm curious if that classic pairing in particular is one that comes up.
One that would match. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so what's so fun about this is that now we're building it. So an interesting fruit that just showed up is persimmon.
Oh.
So we'll add that one. So now what's happening is we're building this whole recipe so you can decide how you're going to do this. So we have the ability now to realize, okay, why do certain foods taste good? So my son Lucas and I were talking about this. We were having fun today looking at this, and he goes, wait a minute, is this a way to pair foods so that the healthier foods will seem like they taste better?
Tasty.
So like I want to put kale and do something else with it, and I'm going to pair it with something that'll augment the cheesy flavor of something else, use less of that, more of the kale. They help each other out. I'm like, this is fascinating. I've never, ever heard of using food pairings through molecular studies to possibly trick your brain into liking the food more.
Making healthy food more appetizing.
Making healthy food more appetizing.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, just kind of a fun little thing. So that's my nerdy clip of the show.
I'm going to spend hours on there now. You've just ruined the next week's worth of work in a good way, for the right reason.
No, and so what you can do is you can actually save your food pairings. And my kids were doing this also, and my daughter Carla built a 40 or 50. Let me look at it here. She started with sea urchin and just branched out, and we've got all kinds of stuff. Sea urchin tied to cow mozzarella, which eventually takes us to buckwheat, and you can just see how much fun this could be, where you could do this, and it's based off the aroma. But what I loved about what Lucas said was, let's make healthy food tastier.
Sure.
And do it like this.
Sure.
A lot of chefs probably know this, but this is a way to actually use this as this is the style that I'm going to do. When I have the Hashimoto's food pharmacology going on, I'm going to make it taste a little better. This is the way to do it.
Yeah, no kidding. No, that's a brilliant tool that I had never been exposed to. I like somewhat of the idea that foods could make you smell a little bit different. Onions, for instance. I mean, I love onions, but if they're not grilled and you're eating fresh onions, it's, unless your partner is also eating onions, it's kind of a no-go. But hey, you and I had a discussion though, and I don't want to derail us off of building the foods to make them taste better, but it wasn't that long ago you and I had a discussion about what asparagus does to urine. And you said that somebody was doing a test whenever I believe you were in med school, that they were basically trying to figure out how fast somebody could rapidly make the urine change its odor from consuming the asparagus. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in the day, this is during my fellowship. Dr. Wesser was pioneer in gastroenterology. He's the guy that figured out that there's such a thing as lactose intolerance. You know, we say it now like it's nothing, but somebody had to figure it out, that there's an enzyme called lactase. And so he was, as a scientist, and back in the day, it was kind of fun because he would give us a lecture every year, and fantastic guy. He was in his 70s, just kind of having fun with us. He'd come part-time lecturer, and it would be the same lecture. So it'd be all these pictures from like the 70s. It was awesome. He made everybody eat a bowl of asparagus, and then they had to go pee, and everybody had to time when they could smell the asparagus. And it was really funny because that was his absorption study. Sure. And I don't think I'd get away with that now, where I'm just like, everybody eat this. Then go pee. Bring your pee to me so I could smell it. Yeah. Yeah. What was the takeaway whenever y'all were doing that, though? It was just fascinating how quickly it happened. Yeah. So the breakdown of the food happens really quickly, and these molecules that do this actually get into your bloodstream and get filtered through your urine. Some of them remarkably quick. So, like, we have all these people, you're talking about onions. When people take allicin, which is a garlic extract, right, they will actually ooze the garlic out of their breath, out of everything, because it just gets absorbed so much. Sure. And that's one of the issues that my patients will have when they come to me. They'll be taking supplements and be like, something's wrong. I'm like, are you on allicin? They're like, yeah. I'm like, I could smell it from here.
Well, if you happen to watch the Gut Check Project and you want us to have the ability to tackle a new subject, the best thing to do is go to kbmdhealth.com. That's kbmdhealth.com. Go to the Gut Check Project show. You'll find that there is the ability to connect with us and submit something that you want us to tackle. That's really how the last 2 weeks, we've stumbled across what we've come across to talk about.
We cover so much ground here. I mean, wouldn't it be really cool? We were talking last week about bringing Dr. Blair on, Colonel Blair on, and we're going to talk about TBI. Right. Now imagine doing the because I'm at a hospital. It's a trauma hospital. We don't have a food protocol for traumatic brain injury. We don't have a CBD protocol. We don't have a DHA or any of that stuff. Wouldn't that be amazing if we could go, we're going to give you a brain inflammation diet. You're going to be on these supplements, and this is the protocol that's going to happen. That's the goal of this whole thing, is to bring the science in. I mean, a whole separate show would be talking about sulforaphane, which is a molecule in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli. Well, as it turns out, it's really, really good for you. It's anti-cancer, it's anti-inflammatory, but when you cook it, the enzyme can't break it down, called myrosinase. And so like a little hack would be a chef where we could sit there and say, no, we're going to put some mustard seed powder on it, and then it'll actually convert it. So you just made your broccoli or broccoli sprouts way healthier. Sure. So if you ever get diagnosed with cancer, and there's all these crazy studies about like bladder cancer and stuff like that, when you do that, like I would love to have a food protocol on what you're going to do. The Hashimoto's food protocol is right there. We're going to have a food protocol if you get this. Eventually we're headed that way.
Right, no joke. Well, in the cruciferous vegetables, they come with DIM, basically. So you're blocking the estrogen, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. No, that's pretty magical. And speaking of cruciferous vegetables, another one would be cauliflower. Just last night, my wife and I went to go eat pizza. Awesome pizzeria, and they actually make gluten-free pizza. The crust was made out of cauliflower. It's amazing what they're doing with cauliflower now because it tastes like great bread, and it's not bread at all. You're basically having a great cruciferous vegetable while you're eating a delicious pizza.
And we're hoping they didn't spray glyphosate on it so that it's good all around.
Yeah, a non-GMO cruciferous vegetable crust that tastes just like regular bread. So it's pretty awesome.
No, I love all of those cauliflower crusts. So
it is delicious. So we've got about half a minute here before Chef Patrick's going to join us in the next half hour. Just a quick reminder, if you are watching the Spoonie Network, or if you haven't, you need to be sure and check it out. There is also another show that is hosted by Alicia Shakespeare. Alicia Shakespeare, and her name of her show is No Butts Too Big.
No Butts Too Big.
Apostrophe BUTS. No Butts Too Big. Check it out. It's a great show, and we will join you in the next half hour.
Right on.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Got an old car? You can donate it, whether it's running or not, to the United Breast Cancer Foundation and save a life. They'll even come and pick it up for free. The United Breast Cancer Foundation has saved hundreds of women's lives through their free or low-cost breast screen exams. But now they need your help. The United Breast Cancer Foundation wants to save more lives through early detection by offering women free or low-cost breast screening exams. And donating your old car, SUV, or truck, whether it's running or not, helps pay for them. Plus, you get a charitable tax deduction. Help the United Breast Cancer Foundation save lives by donating your old car, SUV, or truck. Call now for free pickup. 800-245-0823. 800-245-0823. 800-245-0823. Call right now. That number again is 800-245-0823.
Are you tired of high cable TV rates? Sign up for Dish today and get a $500 bonus offer while supplies last. Plus, lock in your price for 2 years guaranteed. Call All American Dish, your Dish authorized retailer now.
800-570-6630. 800-570-6630. That's 800-570-6630. Offers require credit qualification, 24-month commitment, early termination fee, and e-auto pay. Restrictions apply. Call for details.
And welcome back to the Gut Check Project. This is GCP, and I'm Eric Rieger, joined by your host, Dr. Ken Brown.
What is up? Check your ego at the door and let's learn some stuff.
Hey, guess what? We have now our second ever guest. It's our third ever show. So we figured that on our third ever show, we should have our second ever guest. We are joined to my right, the man, the myth, the legend, Chef Patrick Mosher. How you doing, Chef?
That's quite an intro. I'm not sure I can live up to that, but thank you. I'm doing good. I'm doing well. It's not bad for a Sunday.
If you've been living under a rock, Chef Patrick does a lot of everything. He's a chef, obviously. He also produces many of the programs here on Spoonie Radio. He drives fast. He texts and drives. He doesn't sleep. He likes to smile. He likes to laugh. What am I leaving out?
I only voice text, though.
Oh, voice text.
And I just use the Hey Siri command. So if it comes out all garbled and funny, blame Siri.
Yeah, well, I just made it up. I didn't even know if it was true or not.
Well, I do. I drive a lot. I drive around on the weekends between here and there for work and any other time off I have. So, like the real work.
So doctors are unique persons, or they have unique personalities.
Yeah.
Chefs are, I think they take the cake, and food pun intended. I've met a lot of chefs. I have a lot of chefs as patients, and I am just fascinated by that lifestyle. And, thank you so much for coming on. We were talking earlier about how Isabella Wentz sent us her book in the last hour and talk about how food is you are what you eat. All health begins and ends in the gut. And here we are. We've got a chef with some serious experience. You have done a lot.
I've done a few things, yeah. I've worked. Been fortunate enough to work all over the world. I actually kind of started my culinary career in Japan. Well, actually, I started my culinary career in a Sizzler steakhouse when I was like 14.
What kind of sizzler? There's Western sizzling.
It was just Sizzler Steakhouse. It was so Sizzler was a pretty big chain back in the 80s and early 90s.
Sure.
And yeah, so I was the busboy dishwasher at the Sizzler Steakhouse until Thursday nights came around. I got tips as the dishwasher busboy, and apparently on Thursdays there was all you can eat popcorn shrimp. So the kitchen guys said, "Hey, we'll teach you how to run the fryer. We'll teach you how to run the fryer." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'll run. I get to cook." So I was busting it out back there. You can only put 10 pieces of shrimp on any given plate because it's all you can eat, right?
Yeah.
So the Arizona State football team would come in and they'd have 37 plates each or something like that. So you're back there, you're like humping it on the fryer, and they're back there kind of laughing at you because they get your percentage of your tips. Not only are you doing the hardest job because you have to clean the fryer at the end of the night, but they get your money. It only took me about 6 weeks to figure that out.
Sure.
And I was like, man, I'm the dumbest guy on the planet. But
what was
and shrimp everywhere feared you.
yeah, you know what? It's interesting that my first job in the kitchen sent me home smelling like seafood, because later as I progressed into sushi and seafood specifically, every night was like, okay, you can't even go to bed before you take a shower because your sheets are just going to stink in the morning, and it's pretty nasty. But it is what it is.
was your family a frequenter of a Sizzler growing up?
Yes, we would do the Sizzler in Omaha, Nebraska. So yeah,
Salad bar. Remember the salad bar?
Oh, I was just going there. My favorite item there as a kid was not any part of the salad, but the canned chocolate pudding for whatever reason. Quite nutritious. It goes right alongside the square chicken fried steak.
so this is what I love. I mean, it's somebody with your culinary chops that has gone all the way to Japan to learn. And this is where you start, is frying shrimp at a Sizzler.
Sure.
Yeah, I lasted about 2 weeks at a McDonald's before that, but I don't really count that.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody ever does.
No, I was a quitter there.
Sure.
What actually drew you to food?
You know, my father had a large garden. We lived in upstate New York in the town of Corinth, or Corinth, if you live there. It's near Saratoga Springs, Albany, that area, kind of near the middle of the state. And my dad's entire family, all of his siblings except one brother, lived within a mile of each other on the same road. And my grandfather owned, I don't know, a few sections of land on either side. He had a dairy farm, and then a large vegetable garden. And my father tended at least an acre garden every year. So we spent summers, as I was like, 3, old enough to pick beans. You were picking beans and snapping beans and helping mom put stuff in jars so she could can it. And I'm not sure I want to tell my first culinary job as a real job in the family. But actually, it's kind of right up your alley. This will work out well. My grandfather slaughtered 2 cattle every winter, and then we split the meat up amongst the family.
Sure.
He usually did 2 more later, but early in the winter, the first big heavy snowfall, they'd and so you have to string them up, right? You obviously, how do you gently say you kill them? You just kill them.
Hey,
right?
you kill them.
Okay, and then you cut
So on our first episode, we actually explained my background, where Eric would go with his dad to a radio studio, and I would go to the slaughterhouse. So
Yeah,
my dad
exactly.
was
Yeah.
running that kind of stuff. So that's why you're saying that. So
Yeah, no, I mean, no, it's not actually. It's more like the GI part, the butt doctor part. Sorry, no. So maybe I missed my calling, but before they can actually gut the animal, there's something that has to be done. So they hang it upside down. You have to climb up a ladder, and you have to. I was 5 years old when I was taught this my first time. You have to cut around the muscle around the anus, and you have to tie it off, because if you don't, when the stomach elongates, it's a geyser.
Oh, comes out the back end.
So that was my first real job for the family in slaughtering beef. Was I got to climb the ladder and tie it off.
Tie off the butt.
oh,
I know.
yeah.
I'd much rather have. I mean, your job sounds more
That
glamorous.
is permanent constipation.
So that would make total sense why you were drawn to sushi immediately. You're like, I'm getting away from this.
Yeah, no more red meat.
Yeah.
No more red meat. Now you know why I gave up red meat. Not for Lent, but for several years in Japan. Plus the cost.
So after you had the exposure to the dairy farm and all of the vegetables, then that obviously is setting a foundation for you to get into food. You probably had no idea that's where you were leaning, but
Yeah, no, I didn't. I really. My mother was a great cook. My father was a good cook, a very good cook, and their whole family. Every event revolved around food.
okay.
So as I grew up, my father died very young. I was 6 years old. He died of pancreatic cancer at the age of 47.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
and back then there was really no treatment. By the time they figured out why you had back pain, it was pretty much over. And but anyway, so but I spent a lot of time with my mother cooking after that, and I just picked it up. I really love food. I was fortunate enough to move to Germany my senior year in high school, and the family that I lived with that hosted me was very generous, and we got to go to other countries and dine on some fantastic food. And food was a way of life for them. And in Germany is where I learned about minimalism in the cupboard. Because they have dorm-style refrigerators. They don't have big refrigerators. They're slightly larger than little boxes you have in your dormitory. And they shop every day. So every single day, at least once a day, you shopped, unless it was for your bread, because it was delivered in the morning fresh.
Wow.
Ooh,
That's pretty interesting.
Oh, it was awesome.
Very.
It was awesome.
So, hey, just as a side note, growing up and watching my grandmother cook, my dad's mom, she was fantastic. I loved her fried chicken. Now, she fried a lot of stuff, but for some reason back then, she still remained skinny. But She, and I don't know if your mom or your dad was like this, my grandmother could flavor anything to taste terrific. Fried chicken, chicken fried steak, vegetables, etc. But one of her trademarks was to always cook with a cigarette hanging out of her lip. So I think some of that was flavored. A little bit of Winston Burnash was in there, as well as I think that she saved all of the different kinds of meats that she fried in the oil in different Folgers cans, fish oil and chicken grease, etc. Is that something that y'all also did in upstate New York?
Yeah, and the vegetables I think had a different flavor, and we'll start there. But produce, because we had a burn pile every year. We had trees that would fall. We had a lot of property, and we would burn on the actual garden. So and my father would rotate back and forth on 2 plots. So each season, the previous year's burn pile would become the new garden. And so the ash content, right, the potash, the ash content was really high. So a lot of minerals, and it's amazing how healthy the vegetables are when you do that. People used to take the ashes from their fireplace and put them into the burn pile or into their compost heap.
Sure.
We don't do that anymore. But that right there was just fantastic for the flavor and the freshness of vegetables. But my mother, she stewed everything.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, except, what did she call it? Swiss steak was broiled, whatever lean beef steak she could buy that was the cheapest cut with a bone in it, and then smothered in tomatoes and garlic, and then she broiled that in the oven. It was actually pretty good.
It actually sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Compared to what we were talking about on the first part of the show, what I'm thinking is that smoking, it has a lot of it's a carcinogen known as benzene.
Mm-hmm.
What we should do is see the chemical structure similar to benzene to add that good childhood flavor that you're missing from the smoke.
That's right.
And the cook without getting the cancer.
Yeah, probably so. You could put Winston cigarettes into a mass spec machine and see if it pops out to charred meat.
Figure out what fruit or vegetable has a similar molecular component near benzene.
So. Now I'm interested. I'm really curious about that. This is a fascinating science for me, and I'm thinking I could change my restaurant consulting business to just be menu consulting based on this and elevate all chefs to the next level.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is the kind of stuff, and we wouldn't be talking about it if we weren't preparing for this show. I was just
thought I'd put my water down there.
I was just trying to think of, okay, what's a really cool thing that we could talk about? I have to science this up. I like it. I'm a nerd, and I'll probably try and do this with every single topic that we do. Find something, but yeah, it's really fun.
It's very cool.
That would be really cool. So you're sitting there. So obviously you're exposed to this great organic before organic was cool.
Mm-hmm.
You guys had an organic farm.
We were country poor.
Yeah.
Country poor.
All right. So what happened after that?
Well, we moved to Arizona, which was a whole different thing. And I learned about spicy foods, right? My first meal out in Arizona, we didn't eat out a lot as a child, very rarely, maybe once or twice a year at the most. We went to this little Mexican restaurant between Chandler and Gilbert, Arizona, which are now massive towns that kind of grown together. But then they were just very small towns. And I don't remember, it's Casa something, this little Mexican place. And I had a chimichanga smothered in spicy green chili salsa, and I went ballistic. It was done. I was never going to do anything but eat tasty food again, and not healthy necessarily, but flavorful food, and that kind of spawned.
And how old were you when you moved down to Arizona?
I guess I was in 6th grade, somewhere in there.
Oh,
6th
wow.
grade, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
So it'd have been a few years.
So then you progress through, you graduate, and then you end up, before you graduated, you worked at the Sizzler. And then how did you decide that food, beyond being told the random days you were going to do popcorn shrimp, was something that you wanted to pursue and deliver to people to make them happy?
Well, I'd had a few other jobs cooking after that, but what I realized is that no matter how cash strapped your family might be, there was always food in the restaurant. And if you worked there, you usually got some of it for free.
Sure.
So I think that was it. I think mentally, I determined never to be hungry again.
Right.
And just parlayed into a career. But I really didn't start cooking full-time until I was in Japan. I was working as an interpreter. I was actually working as a copywriter to start and did some interpreting.
So you actually took a job in Japan as a copywriter?
I did, for a company called TransTech International. They were a technical translation company. The parents of a friend of mine, they had come to the United States to go to school in 8th grade and stayed all the way through high school. They owned and ran the company in Osaka, Japan, and they invited me to come and work for them after. Well, I was actually in college at the time.
Wow.
So I've heard you speak German. Do you also speak Japanese?
Hai, Nihongo wakarimasu.
Wow. So this is fascinating. So chefs are super intelligent people.
Yeah.
And this is what's no, I'm serious. Because I just think it's wild because many of my friends that are chefs are people of extremes.
Sure.
Yes,
And
we are.
that is fascinating. You speak Japanese, German, English,
Kitchen Spanish.
kitchen Spanish.
Rápido, rápido, go. Vamos, 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 vamos. No,
It reminds me of Chevy Chase and what is that?
the Three Amigos.
No, he's in Fletch when he's trying to
Fletch or Fletch
He's
too.
Fletch. He's trying to escape the cops, and then he just picks up a serving tray, and he walks through, and he's like, and he makes his way out of there.
And he gets up and gives a speech after that.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. One of my all-time favorite movies, by the way.
Do you know how many times I've charged things to Mr. Underhill because of that movie?
Oh,
Took
yeah,
a
you better
steak
make
sandwich
that
and a
2
steak
bottles.
sandwich.
I'll have a steak sandwich and a steak sandwich. Yes.
Oh my goodness, yeah, what a great movie.
So, Japanese.
Yes.
Japanese.
So yeah, I basically fell in love with the food there, and I just quit my job and started cooking.
Wow.
That was pretty much it. I just gave up what I was doing. I was working part-time at the hotel, the New Otani Hotel in southern Osaka, and they had a great French-Japanese fusion restaurant. This is in the mid-'80s, right? Late '80s. And I got a job there. I was kind of like their bartender, which meant I poured a lot of wine and made chai.
Sure.
But then I also got to work in the back doing appetizers and hors d'oeuvres, and it was fascinating. I loved it. And Japanese chefs are so meticulous. They have the way they approach food in Japan. They actually have a proverb that defines food in Japan, and it's the ryori. Ryori is actually it's not just food. It's the food. It is the substance of the universe, right? So their philosophy is let little seem like much as long as it is fresh and beautiful.
Wow.
Let little seem like much.
As long as it is fresh and beautiful. So small portions, very ornate and well garnished, very clean and seasonal. Seasonal is the key word there, and typically local.
I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I do remember in one of our previous conversations, you did say that you were with Nobu as well, correct?
Yeah, I did work for Nobu for a number of years. Yeah, I actually I was the executive chef and helped open the restaurant in Aspen, which is Matsuhisa. That's his last name. And then I was fortunate enough to work at several other locations.
So, I mean, I imagine that a lot of those principles that you were talking about probably carried over into the way the presentation, the food.
Yeah, and well, there's a whole nother layer there. I mean, he had lived and worked in Peru for a long time, and he was fascinated by French cooking techniques. So he took these Japanese base ingredients, added the layer of infused the flavors of Peru and Chile, and then took that to another level by using French cooking techniques, and it's just phenomenal stuff.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, I wish I knew what to say there.
So my family, we're huge Asian cuisine fans, and all of it. And our favorite restaurant is actually a Japanese restaurant in Plano, and we go there at least once a week.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, you can say the name. Give him a plug.
Yeah, sure. Yama.
Yama?
YAMA.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, we have the. It's just unbelievable. It's good in the sense that I think it is very, very traditional Japanese food. Hitomi, our waitress, is always our waitress, and so we just sit down and food just starts showing up. That's what I love. The methodical, just this is what's happening. It is predictable. It is
Well, and it's thoughtful.
thoughtful.
Right.
Yes.
So here's a really interesting cultural thing from Japan. There's a great book called Amae no Kozo. It's the anatomy of interdependency. Okay. It describes their whole culture. One of the things in Japan is when you start a sentence, they finish it for you. Like I used to teach for this guy Joe Nouchi. He had 2 small children. I spoke him English. I taught them English. Now I actually am a native Japanese speaker, and it's my second day speaking English. So give me a break. So he would call and he would say Patrick, and I'd say yes. He goes Joe Nouchi desu keredomo, meaning this is Joe Nouchi, and he just stopped. And I'm supposed to finish it. It's like, oh, you must be calling about. But I didn't know that, right? So I'm just like, okay, hi. I just wait for him to say something. But eventually you learn. It's like Japanese interject a lot. They say, hi, so desu ne. And what they're doing is they might say yes. Oh, isn't that so? They're interjecting to let you know they're listening, actively listening. Even if they say something in agreement, it doesn't mean they agree.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. But anyway, back to the point I was making is when you're a guest in someone's house for the first time, and they say, "Would you like some coffee?" And you say yes. They don't ask you how you want it, and they don't bring you the things to put cream and sugar in it. They automatically put in cream and sugar because the first time as a guest in their house, you should not have to think about how you want your coffee served. From then on, you can just make your own, but they alleviate the pressure from you, even if you didn't want it that way. And you accept it graciously because that's the generosity they're giving you to relieve you of the pressure of having to say, "Would you please fix it this way?"
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, there's so many layers of complexity to Japan's culture. That's a whole series of shows for next year.
Well, you've been a chef for a long time. What would be something that in the realm of being a master chef, going from the being taught Japanese and then obviously with some French carryover, what took you to your favorite style of place setting now?
I think just my love of simplicity in food. So as a child, my mother, she stewed a lot of things, but there were really great fresh ingredients. If it wasn't stewed, my father was a big fisherman and hunter. And so we had a lot of wild game. We always had a ton of, venison and backstrap, a lot of rabbit, a lot of fish. So everything was very simple. When we went camping, my father didn't take stuff for dinner. He would hunt it or fish it.
Wow.
Or fish for it.
Oh, that's quite a bit of pressure.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah, that's actually
That's
actually a TV show now called Survivor.
It's called Naked and Afraid.
Yeah, Naked and Afraid, Survivor. There's a bunch of them. Bear Grylls.
How many times did y'all go out and be like, you know what, we're not going to stay out here this time. We're going to go ahead and go on back.
No, you know how many times we had trout for breakfast though? But it was very simple food. So he would take lemons, potatoes, salt and pepper, and onion. And so if he caught trout, then he would simply slice up the potato and the onion, stuff it inside with a couple of wedges of lemon or slices of lemon, salt and pepper, and then wrap it with a pat of butter in there, wrap it up in tin foil and throw it on the fire. If there was other game to be had, then it was just super simple. There were boiled potatoes and simple fixings and then salt and pepper on whatever the game was. And so these really clean, simple flavors for me are really what I identify with. Doesn't mean that you can't really elevate that with a few adjustments, but really being able to identify the main component, like the center of the plate item, the protein. If you can't taste what it's supposed to taste like, I'm not sure what the point is.
Sure. Right? Well, today you ended up joining us because you had just left a gigantic gathering that you were asked to basically help map out. How do you know whenever you have so many mouths to feed that I'm going to be able to put together this kind of plate to serve this type of convention, or do they give you parameters on what they do and don't want?
So menu development or menu selection for any large party is very, very critical, because you have to think about if they have multiple selections, especially, then what is the time to plate each item? Are they plated? Is this buffet? I mean, all that comes into play. I've done parties as large as 2,100 people. I worked for a company in Houston, and we did a large plated dinner for MD Anderson Cancer Research Center.
The cancer hospital there, yeah.
Yes.
Huge.
And so we did 2,100 people seated, but the preparation for that took a week, right?
Oh.
But nothing is really cooked until either some things are made the day before, but not cooked until that day. But all the proteins, like all the tenderloins, all the sea bass. So there were 1,100 pieces of sea bass, and there were 1,400 pieces of tenderloin.
Wow.
Well, the tenderloins were whole. We had to cut them. I had to cut them actually.
Sure.
But yeah, we all that gets cooked in ovens lined out inside of this big giant makeshift kitchen that's 20,000 square feet. And then we had 16 ovens in there, like big commercial ovens.
Do you feel like that your principles and how you want to deliver good health for people through the way that they eat, that sometimes you get compromised because it gets so big?
Yeah, I mean, so there are ways to do that. Again, simplicity is number one.
Sure.
And then limiting your menu to items that fit your desires and what you want to give to people and bring to people in the hospitality industry. You can't compromise that. So only serving things that, and you may look for an alternative protein. So if they couldn't afford the tenderloin, we could do something like baseball steak or tri-tip or something like that. So they get a similar quality of product, just not as expensive. I think that's part of the creativity that chefs have to work with nowadays. Is planning for like an upcoming season. We change menus typically 4 times a year in restaurants.
So are you primarily doing this right now for your work?
Oh, so I do that. Yeah, I mean,
Well, this is your new baby. I want to get into that next.
Yeah, this
how
is
did you
it.
end up here doing a digital show? But
That's
what
my
you're
dumbass
doing-
friend. We'll talk about that in a minute. Sorry, love you, Doc. Miss you so much. Anyway, but the planning phase is really what it is. You have to be very organized, and there's a science to it. You know how many pieces of everything you need, what the portion size is, and then what your standard batch size recipe is. So you just scale that up. Although there can be complications there because salt doesn't scale directly. Some other components like oil don't scale. It's not exponential. It's not like 6 times this equals that. No,
Sure.
You have to scale some things back and scale things up.
So what I love about this is that you're talking exactly kind of leads into the first part of the show, but this is how I cook. I view it more as a science.
It
and I
is.
want to know like this, and like I didn't have a grandmother with a Marlboro Light in her mouth,
to
That's
season
Winston.
pot, sir.
seasoning the
Winston.
food. Winston, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like now at this stage, like I really enjoy cookbooks. So that's why I was so excited that Isabella went and sent that cookbook. I've got Bobby Flay's cookbook, which is that one. On a quick side note, is that it'll be like, now add this sauce, and you're like, got it. And then you turn to page 20 and you're like, that sauce has 50 ingredients.
Okay, so
What?
so there's a very famous book called the Larousse's Gastronomique, right? And there's another one written by Auguste Escoffier, who really founded modern French cuisine, right, in the way that they cook in French kitchens. And what happens is they'll say like coquille Saint-Jacques, which is say scallops with Marnier sauce or something like Meunier sauce. So you see the scallop recipe, and then it says, okay, now see recipes 42, 918, and 1126. But when you go to one of those, the herb butter's like 97 steps. And then you have the Mornay sauce is like, or Meunier, whatever sauce you end up making is like 467 steps. And you can't store it cold. It has to be held hot and fresh. I mean, it's so complicated that I was like, okay, that one's going back on the shelf, and maybe never. I don't think I've ever dusted it back off again. I mean, I read it religiously when I was in culinary school.
Yeah, I'm a terrible cook, and sometimes whenever I want to cook and I'm learning to piece certain things together, if I see that there's a whole nother mess of steps to make one ingredient, I usually like, we're just not having any of this. It's changing now. The menu, the item is off the menu. We're going to do something else.
Well, and that's part of the. So I'll say it on the show sometimes. I don't do show prep well. I prep much better for life in restaurants than I do life on the radio.
Sure.
And sometimes I'll get halfway through a recipe, and I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense, huh? No, that. And then I spend a minute researching. Oh, I didn't actually read the recipe. I just assumed that this is what they meant because this was the type of recipe. So, pre-reading the recipe, knowing the ingredients and the methodology that are coming up are really important. Doing your prep work.
Well, before we end up rounding out the last of this hour, since you are one of the main producers for the Spoonie digital radio station, we will get to why you ended up joining Spoonie Radio, et cetera. But tell us a little bit about some of the other shows that Ken and I are just now joining a little bit.
So you mentioned Elisa Shakespeare. She actually has her show No Butts Too Big is phenomenal. She's a very energetic young lady, but she had some health issues, and she owns a company called Total Cluster Fudge. Which is isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome? And so there's another new one called something Monkey Butts, but that one is actually is the healthy version of the dessert she does now for Total Cluster Fudge. And as this dessert manufacturer, she had to stop eating the things that she makes. And these are carried in convenience stores and Costco, and they're sold over the internet, and some restaurants use them as well. But it's just great. She walks you through healthy tips and tricks to just lead a healthier life every day. And along those lines is Gwen Rich of the Rich Solution.
Rich Solution.
Yeah, she's got stage 4 cancer for the last 6.5 years. She's lived way past her expiration date, as she and her husband Adam say. But she was misdiagnosed for 8 years before that. So she gives tips on eating more with more nutritional value, more healthful, and how to, if you haven't been diagnosed, how to prevent being diagnosed as best as possible.
Wow.
And that's the very first show I did with Doc Thompson, that, rest his soul.
Yeah, you were supposed to sit in on my show, but he said, no, I'm going to take him so he can get out here early. I'm like, okay, that means he didn't do show prep.
Well, what I love is this is leading into it. Like, I think we can do a show where we can include the chemistry and say, how do we make these things healthier? Like increase your sulforaphane and stuff like that, urolithins, all these big words that basically you're going to eat well and you're going to be healthier.
Well, we got room for plenty more shows. So if you want to collaborate, we're ready to go. Yeah, we got.
So we got a half a minute here before we have to wrap this part up. So if you're watching now, stay tuned. You can always check out lovemytummy.com/Spoonie to pick up Atron Teal. KBMDhealth.com. You can pick up your KBMD CBD. Next half hour, we're going to talk to Chef Patrick a little bit more about not just what he's done as a chef or what brought him to Spoonie, but also you also are quite experienced with CBD, Chef Patrick.
I want the stories. I want the real late night chef stories.
Well, I was
stories.
a kid getting. We'll talk about that.
We'll see you
All right,
shortly.
let's do it.